let's just get you a quick sense of what the numbers are looking like. 290 is the latest tally for Joe Biden, which has given him that comfortable victory, taking him way beyond the 270 magic number. That's where things stand. If you're just joining us, the Associated Press has handed Pennsylvania and Nevada, the crucial battleground states, to Joe Biden. With that, 20 and 6 electoral college votes, 26 in all going to Joe Biden, which has made 6 in all going to Joe Biden, which has made this contest from being an absolute nail-biter to a victory for Joe Biden. The Associated Press declaring him as the president-elect. We've got you the reaction coming in from his running mate, Kamala Harris, who is now the vice president-elect as well, who spoke to him over the phone just a few moments ago, congratulating him, saying, "We did it, Joe." What a day it is for the United States of America, and what a day it is for the India-US partnership as well, with Kamala Harris set to become the first Indian origin vice president of the United States, Joe Biden, president-elect. Kamala Harris also the first woman vice president of the United States. So that in itself tells you what a crucial chapter this has opened for the United States. This has been a presidential race which has seen a polarized campaign, to say the least, a divisive United States of America. Speaking about that, let's get in a quick reaction from Susan Tehrani as well, who's been getting us the very latest from on ground in New York. Susan, if you can just take a step back and look at the larger picture here. We have an America which stands divided, given the polarized campaign, given the divisions which have once again come to the fore. The possibility of civil unrest is unfortunately a very real one, given that Joe Biden has now been declared as the president-elect. What is the security preparedness looking like? Are the protests still continuing in some parts of the United States?
Absolutely. Security measures are on high alert. And here in New York, the NYPD has been working on overdrive to make sure that these protests in the past few days don't turn violent. More or less, they were peaceful. There were some incidents and arrests. And across America as well, I mean, you really saw two camps. You saw the Trump supporters going to polling stations in Detroit, Michigan, for example, and saying stop the count. And on the other hand, you saw Biden supporters going out in the street and saying continue counting the votes. But, you know, what's interesting is this country, you're right, is extremely divided right now. And Joe Biden's main challenge will have to be whether or not he's able to move past the rhetoric of being the president of all Americans and really putting that in action. And one of those things would have to be working with his old friend, so to say, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, to try to bring America together with a lot of their policies. But what's very fascinating is these are the streets of New York right now. If you were here 4 years ago and Hillary Clinton was expected to win, and she didn't, and the presidency went to Donald Trump, it was a shanty town. People were crying. They were hoping for celebrations, and they didn't get it. So one might argue at the end of the day, despite the divisions, this was a win for American democracy. The fact that this many people showed up to go out and vote and put their ballots out, whether by mail or in person, really demonstrates how important this election was for them, and how the next president will really have to bring this country together if you want to prevent any more unrest, protests, and really the questioning of moral values at the end of the day. So it's a tough job. It's a win for now, perhaps, for Joe Biden, but his road ahead is going to be very, very long.
All right, and that reassurance has already come in from Joe Biden, where he says that he will be a leader for all Americans, and that is the need of the hour, as Susan Tehrani is also telling us. Stay with me, Susan. Also getting a quick reaction from Richard, who's been with us, for a better sense of what this means for American partnerships with countries across the world, specifically with India. We've seen the Trump-Modi partnership, the bonhomie, the chemistry between the two leaders, which made headlines not just in India or the US, but across the world. That friendship has been spoken of. the Joe Biden-Narendra Modi equation, what do you think that's going to look like?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to be defined by the senior people that Biden appoints in his administration. The president only has a certain amount of time to engage in foreign relations, and typically it involves, very high point things rather than day-to-day engagement. When you find out who the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, even the Treasury Secretary, but also getting faster and more appointments. For 4 years, we haven't had a confirmed Assistant Secretary of State to manage the relationship. So we've been without the day-to-day point person for the relationship. Certainly, we've got some very good staff at the White House and other places. But so I think, the real determinants about what day-to-day looks like is going to be more by who the vice president appoints to his cabinet and to the positions just below the cabinet. And I tell you, for an insider like Vice President Biden, there are a lot of folks that are in line to try to secure those positions. So that's the great parlor game in Washington right now with the announcement of the victor is who's going to be getting those kind of key roles in the administration. Those are the folks that are going to define what the relationship really looks like, even more in some ways than the president does.
All right, Richard. A very interesting point that you make here of what the India-US friendship will look like under Joe Biden. Stay with me. Also speaking about how countries across the world are viewing this election result. We have already gotten reactions from the UK Prime Minister, from the Canadian Prime Minister. We will get to them just one by one. First, to the latest coming in from Barack Obama, who has congratulated Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's a comprehensive statement that's been issued by the former president of the United States, who has campaigned very aggressively for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm quoting now from that statement. "I could not be prouder to congratulate our next president, Joe Biden, and our next First Lady, Jill Biden. I also could not be prouder to congratulate Kamala Harris for Kamala's groundbreaking election as our next vice president." He goes on to say, "In this election, under circumstances never experienced, Americans turned out in numbers never seen. And once every vote is counted, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris will have won a historic and decisive victory. We are fortunate that Joe's got what it takes to be president and already carries himself that way, because when he walks into the White House in January, he will face a series of extraordinary challenges no incoming president ever has. A raging pandemic, an unequal economy and justice system, a democracy at risk, and a climate in peril." That's the comprehensive statement issued by Barack Obama. We also have reactions now coming in, as we said, from across the world, starting first with how UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has reacted. That's the statement coming in through that tweet issued by Boris Johnson. Congratulations to Joe Biden on his election as President of the United States, and to Kamala Harris on her historic achievement. "The US is our most important ally, and I look forward to working closely together on our shared priorities, from climate change to trade and security." Those are the main areas that he's talked about. Like we said, the UK-US partnership will change from here onwards in many ways, and we will continue to talk about that. We also have Bernie Sanders issuing a statement coming up on your screen. "I want to congratulate all those who have worked so hard to make this historic day possible. Now, through our continued grassroots organizing, let us create a government that works for all and not the few. Let us create a nation built on justice, not greed and bigotry." So the reason why he's chosen to capitalize the word all is a very significant one. Joe Biden has promised that he will be a leader for all Americans, as opposed to Donald Trump. And that's something that we've been talking about. Being a leader for all Americans and putting aside those divisions that have come to the fore during this election is going to be a very crucial challenge up ahead for Joe Biden. Bill Clinton has also issued a statement on Twitter just minutes ago, putting that on your screen. "America has spoken and democracy has won. Now we have a president-elect and vice president-elect who will serve all of us and bring us all together. Congratulations to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on your momentous victory." Nancy Pelosi also issuing this tweet: "We kept the republic. Congratulations to Joe Biden on his victory for the soul of our country. Congratulations to Kamala Harris for making history. It is a time to heal and a time to grow together." Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, also congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, saying, "Our two countries are close friends, partners and allies. We share a relationship that is unique on the world stage. I am really looking forward to working together and building on all that with you both." These are the reactions that have come in over the last few minutes, cutting across the world. Leaders congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Susan Tehrani has been with us, getting us the very latest from New York. We also have been playing out for you the celebrations coming in from Times Square. Susan, the one question on everyone's minds is that even though the numbers are in favor of Joe Biden at this point, to what extent do we see the legal tussle changing that at all?
The legal battle by Donald Trump, it's going to continue. I mean, this is who Donald Trump is. And, you know, interestingly enough, this is New York. This is where he has a home. This is where multiple Trump towers are. So, you know, he's also looking at one of his home states, basically, apart from Florida, that's celebrating his now what we know as defeat. But Donald Trump being Donald Trump, he believes that he owes it to his supporters, he owes it to himself and his campaign, and to a large part, people who voted for him and America, that he fights until the very end to make sure that there is no stones left unturned. Now, whether or not he'll get anywhere by doing that is one question, but what that also raises is the possibility of some of his supporters that take his words literally and out of context to come out and foment violence and take to the streets and try to challenge the status quo. So it's a very tricky situation that the Trump campaign is right now. But you know, you go on social media and you see his supporters defending him and backing him up, and unfortunately undermining one of the most democratic pillars of our country, which is the right to vote and you know, accurate voting. And they're saying that there was probably fraud. That's why that their president lost. It's a challenging place to be in, but it's also important to note that when it comes to Joe Biden and all the congratulatory remarks coming from U.S. officials, it seems like the bar is very high for him, the way that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are congratulating him, in a way that once he's elected, there's sort of going to be this sweep of a brush and everything is going to be perfect and America is going to be united once again. And we're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That's probably not going to be the case. That would be my guess, considering the fact that many of his Democratic allies in Congress recently, a few of them had a meltdown on a call with Nancy Pelosi, saying that the reason we're losing Congress and we're losing support of the American people is because we keep talking about defunding the police and some of these extreme leftist policies. So he has to really go back to his own party as well and try to tone things down and maybe bring them a little more to the center, if that's even possible at this point, so they actually have somewhat of a control over Washington and then move on to sort of bring this unity that they speak of.
Right. Stay with me, Susan. We have some developments coming in from what's going on within the Trump camp. Well, it's nothing to do with the electoral result. Let's tell you that Donald Trump is at the moment golfing at the golf club in Virginia. These are the latest images of Donald Trump after his defeat to Joe Biden. Trump's Twitter has also been silent. The last tweet, a glaring one, saying 2 hours ago, where he's announced his victory, saying that I have won by a lot. That's all that the tweet says in his trademark capitalized letters. On the other hand, we have these images coming in of Donald Trump golfing in the golf club in Virginia. We have Stephen Golub also, who's been getting us his perspectives on what we are unfolding, or we're seeing unfolding in the United States of America. Stephen, you know, we have Donald Trump, who has time and again questioned the voting process, the democratic process. Now that the result is out, we don't see a statement from his team as of now. we will perhaps see them react as sharply as they have over the last few hours as well. But give us a better sense of what this tells us about a leader who has been questioning the very process that got him to power. The mayor in Philadelphia just a few hours ago had asked Donald Trump to put his big boy pants on, quote unquote, and concede defeat. But given how we've seen Donald Trump reacting all this while, we do not really see that happening.
No, I like that comment, put his big boy pants on. Just briefly, just a personal reflection over the course of this broadcast, I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders, not my personal shoulders, but the country's shoulders. 4 years ago, there was really, for many of this traumatic event of the surprise shock of Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump. And it wasn't just the loss itself, it's the way Donald Trump acted in the ensuing years. I gave a talk in India shortly after the election to a policy institute there, and then an interview to WION, in which I was cautiously, not optimistic, but at least cautiously neutral about the possibility that Donald Trump would grow into the job, despite his previous track record in the campaign and earlier in his career. He didn't grow into the job at all. In fact, he continued in many ways to act like someone who was a little boy, a petulant 2-year-old. And I think a lot of people around the country are not just celebrating, but breathing easier. As for a broader perspective, it says a lot about Trump, but it's not shocking to many of us that he's refusing to concede in the ways that Republican losers Mitt Romney and John Cain honorably did when they lost previously, and Democrats have. We have a tradition of losing candidates conceding graciously and in respecting our democratic institutions and our democracy. That's not Donald Trump. Going forward, I think he's going to be doing some calculations purely in terms of what's in his own self-interest. Should he moderate his tone somewhat, even though he won't concede? I'm almost absolutely sure about that. Moderate his tone somewhat, not rabble-rouse, or will he continue to try to build and maintain the Trump brand of saying the election was absolutely stolen from me, I deserve to be in the White House for the next 4 years, and how far he'll push that in terms of rabble-rousing his supporters to do demonstrations or engage in other civil unrest and even potentially be violent. That's a big question mark. I'm not terribly optimistic that he'll back away from that stance, because Trump is looking beyond the election to perhaps, even if he loses, even if he realizes in his head that he's going to have to leave the White House, to start perhaps Trump TV as a marketing and money-making venue for him, to deal with at least $400 million of debt that's piling up, to deal with the possibility of being prosecuted and going to jail, whether on federal or New York State or New York City charges for potentially criminal activities he engaged in, to his tax returns being released now that he's no longer in the White House. He's looking at some very negative scenarios, and maintaining his brand and political support and a media presence may be fueled, may be supported by continuing to take a hard line now. I kind of hope I'm wrong about that, but everything we've seen about Donald Trump for the past 4 years is not encouraging about the way he's going to act going forward.
Right. You talk about how the weight the weight on the people of America, their shoulders, has been lifted through this result. It's a very significant statement that you make here, given the divisions that we've seen come to the fore throughout this election. Stephen Golub, how concerned are you about the polarization on the ground, the possibility of a civil unrest, the protests that have continued, and the ugly possibility of things spiraling out of control over the next few hours, if things do turn that ugly?
Over the next few hours, I don't know, but I'm very concerned about over the next few weeks and months, that Trump will encourage people to, he won't actually say, go out with your automatic weaponry, which a lot of Americans have because that's our gun culture here, and do some violence. No, he won't be as explicit as that, but he's hinted at all sorts of things. Lock her up for Hillary Clinton when there were no charges to do so. And in terms of when I said the weight off of our shoulders, I think it's important to emphasize that, yes, many Americans, as I was saying, we do feel a weight lifted over our shoulders, a greater lightness going forward. But that's, just a little bit more than half the country. And there are Trump supporters who are feeling depressed. They're feeling cheated. They're feeling angry right now. Donald Trump may feed into that. They're living in a completely different media universe. You in India covering the U.S. election are doing a better job, and I have tremendous respect for WION regardless, but you're doing a good job of showing what's going on here. Lots of Americans aren't getting such good coverage. They're watching Fox News, which in some ways has covered the election okay, its news division has, but more people watch Fox's opinion people who may still be ranting and raving about the election maybe being stolen. A lot of them get their news just from Trump's tweets, and we know how biased those are, or from social media platforms, or from radio hosts who are absolutely pro-Trump. So a lot of those people may be agitated by Trump or by those other platforms and outlets. And even though I don't think over the next few hours we'll see bad things happening, it's possible that over the next few days, weeks, whatever, depending on how Trump handles this, there could be civil unrest and potentially violence. There will be good days and bad days going forward from now until Biden is most likely inaugurated.
All right, so good days and bad days ahead is what Stephen Golub is saying. For now, it's a historic day. The United States of America will have the first woman vice president in Kamala Harris, who is now the vice president-elect. She will also be the first Indian origin vice president of America. And that says a lot about which way the India-US partnership will go. We have been talking to our panel of experts about the ramifications on the India-US equation, also on the partnership between US and countries across the world, how there will be a possible reset of the India-China ties. That's another takeaway coming in from the comments coming in from our experts at this point. These are latest live images that we're getting to you from Washington, D.C. We've been also getting you a flavor of the celebrations that are taking place at Times Square in New York. While there is a wave of celebrations, there is anticipation in the air, which has now turned to jubilation. A lot still remains under a question mark. How will the Trump campaign respond now? We have that legal challenge that they are gearing up for. Will this become an ugly legal tussle? And how prepared is the Republican camp even to take this forward in the courts, given that they've refused to back up their claims of voter fraud and irregularities with any evidence so far? Over the last 24 hours as well, Donald Trump has spoken about voter fraud in unprecedented developments. We saw several TV news networks blacking out the president's address, cutting away while he was still in the middle of that address, choosing to not air his address, saying that he was spreading misinformation. And that's been one crucial factor where his campaign has hinged. His tweets, his statements surrounding around voter fraud and irregularity is something that they have not been able to substantiate with evidence. Those claims have been made time and again. But at the same time, we're seeing the numbers giving out that decisive victory to Joe Biden. What a tremendous feat this has been for the Biden campaign. 290 electoral college votes, Nevada and Pennsylvania going towards the Joe Biden path, clearing his way for winning this race to the White House. A lot has changed over the last 2 hours from that wave of uncertainty to the wave of jubilations that we are seeing in Washington, D.C. and several parts of the United States of America. Susan, we've been talking about the factors that seem to have worked in the favor of Joe Biden, and the COVID-19 crisis has been one. But speaking about the misinformation that the Trump campaign also has focused on, the people of America seem to believe that Joe Biden will be the leader who will safeguard their interests, not just when it comes to their health, but also lead the way for all Americans. And that's been something that he has emphasized on through almost all of his statements in the run-up to this day.
That's right, he has. That's what he's been trying to say. He says that I'm the leader for all Americans, and that's the platform of sort of compassion that he ran on all through his election. He did focus on COVID. As we always say, his campaign was really COVID-centric. And now he comes into office at a time when there is probably going to be a vaccine before the end of the year, so that'll hopefully help the American people deal with this crisis that they've never seen before on the one hand, and also on the other hand sort of pin Joe Biden as the person that cured America from COVID, at least with a vaccine to some extent. On the other hand, you have the issue of healthcare. Healthcare is very important to Americans right now, not just because of COVID, but because of the fact that a lot of Americans are out of job right now. And what Obamacare did, and what Joe Biden really fights for Obamacare, sort of this healthcare for all, really paved the way for a lot of people to get health care when they didn't have the opportunity to do so. And whether Donald Trump meant it or not, he sort of implied that he wants to get rid of Obamacare, and without people not knowing really what that entailed, and he kept flipping back and forth on that. I think that was also an issue that Americans were concerned about, considering the fact that, you know, that's that's for lower income Americans for the most part, and because of COVID, you know, our economy hasn't been doing so well, so healthcare, you know, becomes a very central role in that sense as well. But we'll see. Just to follow up on what we were discussing before, Trumpism is not going to be dead after Donald Trump. He has really invigorated this kind of populist conservative movement that will live on well beyond him among his supporters. And whether Donald Trump decides to be at the forefront sort of as a leader, which he does like to be in the spotlight all the time, so we'll see whether he does that or not. But this is a movement that's here to stay, and that'll be the main challenge for someone like Joe Biden, to really appeal to that part of America, or just not pay attention to it at all, as Barack Obama did. And Barack Obama, as we know, paved the way for someone like Donald Trump. So these are his challenges.
Right, and one clip that's been doing the rounds on social media at this point has been from the presidential debate last time around, where Donald Trump has been accused of alleging there's been rigging in just about everything that he loses. And this, unfortunately, will become reality for this presidential race as well, perhaps, given the way Donald Trump has reacted to Joe Biden taking the lead in the battleground states. We haven't heard from the Trump campaign team so far ever since Joe Biden was declared the winner by the Associated Press. He was handed Pennsylvania and Nevada in that quick turn of events. Not so quick, given that the results have been counted for 4 days now since election day, but quick in the sense that this was an election on a knife edge. It was a very tight race in those battleground states, but in the latest, the Associated Press has given Pennsylvania and Nevada, that's 26 electoral college votes to Joe Biden over the last 2 hours, and that has taken his total tally to 290 electoral college votes, way beyond the magic number of 270. The Associated Press has declared Joe Biden as the winner of this race. It is going to be a Joe Biden White House, as per the Associated Press. With him, Kamala Harris as the vice president, the first woman vice president of America. What a campaign this has been, an extremely polarized one. And unfortunately, we do have the possibility of civil unrest intensifying, a possibility of civil unrest over the next few days and weeks ahead in America. That's something that we have been talking about as well. But for now, giving you a flavor of the celebrations that we are witnessing on ground in Washington, D.C., as people have been turning out in large numbers ever since those numbers gave that decisive victory to Joe Biden. We haven't heard from the Trump campaign team. The last tweet from Donald Trump, who is known to tweet very often, especially during the campaign and the election results, has not tweeted over the last 2 hours. We understand that he was golfing in Virginia just a while ago. We also played out for you images coming in from that golfing club. We don't know what's expected to come out from the Trump campaign over the next few hours. But what we can say is that Joe Biden is now declared as the winner of this race, a very tight one in those crucial battleground states, which also has been a surprise for many electoral observers. A quick reaction from Susan Teherani on how the pollsters, Susan, need to now give this a very close look. They've been deceived all over again. And the predictions that it's a similar story that we saw last time around as well, where the predictions do not hold.
Absolutely. Polling is something that really needs to be reconsidered once again here in the United States. As you mentioned, in 2016, one of their excuses was that we didn't understand the silent Trump voter, because people were scared to say that they were going to vote for Trump because Hillary sort of had this kind of monopoly on the media and everything. Well, guess what? It was the same thing this year. First of all, people did not have they weren't comfortable saying that they vote for Trump, because at this point it wasn't just, you'd be sort of looked at in a certain way. It was the fact that people would attack Trump voters. So that's on the one hand. Historically, we know conservatives don't like to take polls. That's something else, that the polls usually go into these small groups of 300, 400, but the majority of them, when you look really closely at the fine line, it says, for example, +9 Democrats. So it's usually more Democratic-centric. And on the other hand, there is an interest issue that comes in play. We journalists have to decide whether or not we're in it for the business, or we're really reporting the facts, or we're reporting what we want to hear. The business aspect of it is when the polls are so off by 10, 15 points, then that means that the other party sort of is at a disadvantage to raise money, to create confidence, to bring in donors, so to say, and to really run a proper campaign. On the other hand, it's a psychological issue that comes for the American people. When you see someone that, no matter what they say, the polls are indicating from the sky above, from heaven above, that there is like a 15% difference, there's a 10% difference. That means one candidate basically has no chance. So let's pay attention to what the winning candidate is saying. I mean, that's the psychological aspect of it. And I know that your guest also mentioned that a lot of people just don't sit and watch the news every day. They get it here and there, and these polls play a very important role. But yes, the polling, the predictions, the pundits, and us journalists, we all have to sort of take a step back to see how we got these margins so wrong once again this time. And this time is not like 2016 where we don't know what's going to happen. What is going to happen is an extremely divided country that won't be able to come together if we continue to predict what we want to predict and not what's really happening on the ground.
Absolutely. Susan Teherani, thanks very much indeed for getting us a better sense of where things stand and those reactions from on ground. With that, we're taking a very short break, but there is uncertainty definitely which has ended for the United States of America, with the Associated Press handing over that victory to Joe Biden, who is set to take over as the next president of the United States. With him, Kamala Harris, the first Indian origin Vice President of America, the first woman Vice President of America. A lot that remains to be discussed, ramifications, of course, of this result, not just for America, but for the entire world. We'll delve deeper into all of those aspects, continuing right here on WION World is One. For now, taking a short breather.